IVM.
You are never given a dream without also being given the power to make it true. One person who completely resonates with this quote is Samara Mahindra. Her encounter with cancer and what happened in her personal life changed her world, but she made sure that she was able to derive positivity out of it and lead into a career where she's helping millions of people recover to a healthy lifestyle. Very excited for the talk today with none other than Samara Mahindra. Welcome to Beneath the Force, the Vishal Gondal show. In my entrepreneurial journey of over 20 years, I've had the pleasure of knowing, interacting and being friends with some of the most amazing super achievers. Each one of them have achieved success in their field by harnessing their knowledge, passion and wealth and have become the force of good. It takes years for one to become an overnight success. I am trying to decode what they did so differently in these years to be where they are today. My guest is a young entrepreneur, Samara Mahindra, who has grown up with horses, did an acting course, studied in Australia and UK, worked for a marketing company in Singapore, but today she is into rehabilitation of cancer patients through her Carroll program. Welcome, Samara, to Beneath the Force.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
Your journey is absolutely fascinating, from being with horses to now, treating cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about your childhood. How was it growing up with, horse? It's not something normal for people, right? To be growing up with horses in India.
So my childhood was, it was a childhood that I would very much tag as perfect for any child. It was one which was in nature. My father, his passion was, breeding horses. So we grew up on a stud farm. It was something that we did almost every day where we were, made to horse ride. And I would go to school, come back, and it was climbing trees and being around nature. That was where...
And this is right outside Bangalore.
This is right outside Bangalore. So we were very used to driving into thick forests while going back home, and TVs, cartoons, junk food, things like that were never part of our childhood.
And how was it like, being in Bangalore at that point of time, right? I mean, it must be a very different city then.
Yeah, Bangalore has changed so much in the last couple of years. At that point, it was very natural to, a lot of people had farms, and the kind of childhood we had was more or less very natural with a lot of the friends that I had. Today, it's different. Today, I have niece and nephews who, live a very different childhood, more obviously in line with technology and things like that. But, at that time, Bangalore was more in the space of, nature and, that kind of
and clearly, growing up with horses, I'm sure you also spent a lot of time riding and doing all kinds of other activities.
Yes, that's more or less what we did. We also did a lot of horse riding in Ooty. We had a really nice, lovely holiday home over there, and a lot of races used to happen in Ooty. I think it still does. So it was something that we did every day in the mornings. We would go for horse riding, and of course that was a habit that unfortunately died out while I was growing up. But yeah.
And you lost your father pretty early, right? And so how was it growing up, with the mother and your siblings in the middle of nowhere, literally, right? That's where your house was.
Mm-hmm. I lost my father when I was 3 years old, so I have no recollection of him. When people talk about him, it's, I really don't know apart from what I've heard. So I grew up with a woman who was a single parent, who then didn't really even make me feel like there was a loss of any other parent. I didn't know otherwise.
You were all of three that time.
I was all of three. And that was the time when my mother was building a very successful company by herself. So I grew up looking and idolizing this woman who, kind of pulled all the strings together and kind of got the foundation going to build something for her children and for herself. So that's what I saw while growing up.
And what was a typical weekend for you?
Out. It was just being in, we had a farm, so it was like spending morning to night, climbing trees, picnics, riding bicycles, things like that. It was completely out in nature.
And after school, tell me more about your education. You traveled abroad. So how was that experience?
So I finished my education in India till the 12th grade. Then I moved to the UK for a little while. It didn't suit me, so I moved to Australia, and I was there.
The weather of
the weather didn't suit me.
And which city were you in the UK?
I was in Kent.
Well, gloomy days there.
Oh
right?
yeah, completely. I was quite a protected, spoiled little child. So for me to leave home, it was a big step, and I was very homesick as well. And the weather definitely didn't help the situation. So I moved to Australia. And then I lived in the Gold Coast, and I was there.
Well, that's quite a place to be.
And yes, and it was, we would go surfing and then come to class. So it was.
And what did you study in Australia?
So I did a bachelor's in business, and then I went further and did a master's in corporate communication.
So growing up in Bangalore in a stud farm, then going to UK and then going to Australia. Mm-hmm. But life had something else planned for you. After that, you went into something completely different.
Yes. So I did everything in my power to stay back in Australia. So I did every course and degree possible. And then eventually my family said it's about time. I had this apprehension to move back to Bangalore for some reason. I just wanted to, see the world and travel. And
so can you recall a conversation with your mom on you wanting to stay in Australia and she wanting you to come back?
I tried, but there was no conversation because my mother was a very, you can call her strict person. So it was a very understood, you're coming back. So the only way that I could get her to let me be there was to do every course possible. But then even after that,
so
she
education was something she was fine with.
Yes. But then even there was a limit to that.
And you kept educating, you became masters. Yes. The only thing left was to do a PhD.
PhD, yes.
And did that thought ever come to you?
Yeah,
that I should
it did.
Go for a PhD?
It did. But then there was she had the end of it. So she said,
and you are the youngest in your family. And who are the other, you have siblings, right? So
yes. So I have 2 older sisters and a brother. So I'm the youngest, and she just wanted me back. She was very, very close to me. Very close.
And your sisters and brother, they're all in Bangalore right now?
Yes.
And did they also study abroad, or were they in Bangalore, or were you the only one who went across the world? And
no, the sister just above me also studied abroad. In fact, she was in Australia. Okay. So that's where I got the green signal to leave Kent and say, okay, fine, you can move to Australia because your sister's over there. So she was studying there as well, but then she also eventually finished her degrees and moved back. And I just was stuck over there. So eventually I did move back, but I didn't want to come to Bangalore. So I came to Mumbai instead.
And you went to Singapore?
I went to Singapore after that.
After Mumbai.
Mumbai.
But you had a very interesting story on why you came to Mumbai.
Yes. So like I said, I was trying to do everything in my power to not come back to Bangalore. So I remember very clearly actually researching Mumbai and thinking, okay, what can I do over there that can be a good enough reason for me to stay in Mumbai and not be in Bangalore? And obviously being the land of Bollywood.
Yeah.
The first thing was, an acting course. And I remember seeing it online and seeing this acting course by Barry John. And I said, you know what, this would be a good idea. So I kind of put that across to my family.
Well, for all the listeners out there, there are many other things to do in Mumbai apart from just acting.
Yes.
But yeah, one of the top reasons for people to come to Mumbai is to join Bollywood. So.
Yes. And at that time, that's, of course, today it's I've seen a different Mumbai altogether, but at that point, it was just, do whatever it takes. And so I presented this to my family and they thought I had lost my mind because it's just me and the kind of person I am, and acting does not equate in any sense. So they
well, looking at most of the other Bollywood stars, I don't think so acting equates there too.
That's true. Anyways, they said, okay, go do it because you have, dedicated a lot of your time to actually studying and getting your degrees. So fine, this is a phase, let her do it. So I did Barry John, but actually Barry John was an eye-opener for me. It made me learn a lot about myself.
So Barry John is this very successful acting institute, right?
Yes.
That's really, and I think Barry John has been doing this for quite some time.
A long time, and he is a theatre professional who then went into acting. So we did a lot of theatre in our course, and a lot about.
And how long was this course?
Oh, it was like about 3 months.
3 months.
So, but it was an intense 3 months, and it gave me a lot of understanding of who I was as a person, opened me up, made me less dependent on, my family or my mother, and learn more about who I was, basically.
So the acting course was not really to join Bollywood?
Not at all. Although my friends and my family, still tease me about it, and they think that, it was just something that I wanted to do somewhere deep down inside. I did try to convince myself as well to a certain point, and I said, just do it, just go for auditions, maybe just try. But I know it was not, it was not in my blood to even.
Well, all I can say is that Bollywood's loss was humanity's gain.
That's very sweet. Yeah.
In this course, you were talking about confidence. And how did acting help you become more confident?
Because you're put into a position where you need to, embody a certain character, and you need to be real. And you can't do that till you understand who you are as a person. And that's what I really give credit to Barry John for, because he kept teaching us about, breaking our own mirrors and our own shields and learning who we were as people, so that we can take over roles or characters of others. And that was a big deal. We went through, at least I went through a lot of emotional, it was an emotional roller coaster, basically.
I thought acting courses where you just go and read some lines and they will take photographs of all kinds.
So did I. That's why I joined. But no, it was a completely different experience. It was a group of people who came together and probably shared more amongst each other than I shared with my family for so many years. You really, you're bare.
So this is almost therapy.
It is therapy. It is therapeutic, actually. It's highly recommended to people who are, finding themselves so introverted or, yeah.
So basically before that course, you considered yourself an introvert.
100%.
And how did that change?
Through the process of, figuring out what or who I am to a certain degree.
And how big was the class? How many people are there in a batch?
I think there were about 15 of us.
Okay, so that's not very big.
Oh yeah, it was not a very big class. Yeah, that was the process, and I didn't realize it was happening. It was happening at a very subconscious level. At that time as well, I was going through, the worst experience of my life, and that is my mother going through cancer. So there I was, and maybe acting was a sense of release and escapism to a certain degree with what was actually happening at home and in reality. So it was these two different worlds that I was living for some time, and for some reason I enjoyed that and I liked that.
And out of all the 15 people who were in the course, how many of them actually ended up making it to Bollywood?
I think 2 or 3 of them went on to becoming pretty successful.
Yeah, and you were telling me about Arjun and Varun, and I was like, who are these people?
Yeah. Yes, they Arjun Kapoor and Varun Dhawan was in my course.
Yeah, I'm sure they have done well, but not as well as what you are doing. So we'll talk about that in a bit. But I still want to be in Mumbai. So being young, doing a course like this with such an amazing group of people, why wouldn't you want to join Bollywood?
There was a point where I said, maybe this is something I want to do. What really interested me was theatre. So I actually went on after the 3 months to go and do theatre workshops. I remember Neeraj Krabi was one of the theatre workshops that I did. And I did many after that. I got into this loop of doing theatre. I kind of almost overdosed on this whole concept of expressing myself and being extroverted, but in a very restricted environment. Mm-hmm. I got, it was just a way of, like I said, expressing myself. But I also feel like it ran its course. I feel like it reached a point where it wasn't doing that for me anymore. And that's when I knew that I had to move on. That was also a time, when my mother fell really ill.
So when did you learn? When did you first came to know about your mother's illness?
So when she was first diagnosed, she showed up in the UK when I was studying in Kent, and she didn't even tell me that she had cancer. I didn't even know what cancer was. I just knew it was something really scary. And obviously when I found out, it was a big shock. She got treated then and there, and she was fine. And about 8 months.
And what kind of cancer was this?
It started as cervical cancer. So cancer that was and is 100% preventable and treatable. So it was just lack of knowledge. If
and this is what 2005 or which year was this?
So she was, yes, it was about 2004, 2005.
Yeah.
Then she relapsed 8 months later. And when she relapsed 8 months later, she decided that she didn't want to continue treatment. She said, whatever treatment I'm going to do, it's going to be in India. She was given 6 months. The oncologist said that it's done.
And where did she go for treatment in India?
In Bangalore. She went to Manipal Hospital. There was really no hope. We really thought that it was the end. But she went on for about 6.5 years after that.
6.5 years post that?
Yes.
And what kept her going?
100% her state of mind. She was a very physically active person, someone who ate well, and she just didn't give up. Cancer just did not take up her life. She would get a treatment, the next day she was back at work.
And she started a very successful business.
Yes.
Tell me more about this business. What was this business all about?
So she started a garment export company. She was left in a situation where my father had passed away, and she was living in this huge farmhouse and really didn't know much apart from obviously the previous years of being a housewife and traveling the world and all of that, but nothing to do with business. And she knew she had to start from scratch because she had 4 children that she had to fend for. So she literally started from scratch. She built a garment export company because she had this inherent, curiosity with or liking towards clothes and fashion and all of that. And slowly but surely in about 10 to 20 years, she built this company.
So this was a company completely started by her in about 2005, when she and the family came to know about, so who started running this company? Was she still continuing that?
She was still continuing, but what she did, which is very much like my mother, is that when she relapsed, she started training all of us. So she would, my sister was already in the company, my older sister was already in the company doing some work, and she started training her and she started teaching her how to, hold the reins and all of that. But I think till the last month, she was still working and she still went to work.
And while she was going through her therapy and cancer treatment, you then went to Australia. When was Australia?
Yeah, it was around that time. I was in Australia around that time.
And you kept going back and forth
yes,
between?
Yes. And that's why there was this, she wanted me to always be there. She was very close to me. So that's why there was a certain amount of guilt because there I was doing these degrees because I just didn't want to come back home. And again, maybe it was a form of escaping what was going on. And she wanted me to be there. So there was no, kind of explanation. It was just an understanding that you have to come home. Mm-hmm. So I said, fine, I will. And I will be in India, but I'll be in Mumbai. And that's
So what was her treatment like? What did you see in that 6 years? What happened? What did the doctors do?
We lived in hospitals. She had multiple rounds of chemotherapy. So you can imagine in 6 years, it was just constant chemotherapy.
So it's almost till from 2005 to 2010.
Yeah. 2004 to 2010.
Yeah, 2004 to 2010. So 6 years of chemotherapy.
Yeah. And it was just constant. So our lives became the hospitals, doctors, and how she was feeling and tests. So I lived I think I can speak for my family. We lived in anxiety for 6 years. Every time I got a call from a family member that was not expected, it was like my heart would race. In fact, today I, very happily switch off my phone at night. And, a lot of people ask me, you switch your phone off? And I say, it's such a luxury for me to do that because it was constantly on call, living on the edge that if something's going to happen, what's going to happen? Because we knew that there is, we were just trying different types of drugs. And we were just
what were the kind of conversations you used to have with your mother during this 6 years?
My mother was a very strong woman. So she would really face it up front and she would sit with each one of us. She would call us in. She would tell us about how to run the business, how to live, what kind of man we should marry, how to deal with the finances, how to deal with the properties. She would really, really go deep down into managing everything. And, of course, we wouldn't hear of it and we wouldn't, accept it at the start. But today, thank God she did. Thank God she did. So she was very, very upfront about it. She was not one of those patients who said, you talk to my family and I'll just deal with it, without really knowing what's going on. She used to send us out of the room and say, tell me what's going on. How much time do I left? Let me get my stuff in order.
And you saw the treatment very closely.
Yes.
And I know the cancer treatment can be really harsh, not only on the patient, but also on the near and dear ones. Mm-hmm. What were the thoughts which were going through you when you were seeing the treatment?
I was in a space of days. I had no idea. I was very naive. I just held on to any hope that I could find. And it was torturous for all of us because we felt a very deep sense of helplessness. And that's what I see even today. A very deep sense of cluelessness, just not knowing. And we put like all our faith into, the doctors, and that's it. And didn't question, just went with it. And it was just whatever we could do, whatever hope we could hold on to, that's all we did. The problem was that, there was one side of her where she just wanted to get on with life and say, this is a part of what I'm going through right now and whatever. The other part was that we never spoke about it. It was not an open conversation that we would have. I didn't even speak to my friends about it for 6 years. It was not something that I even mentioned. It was just everyone knew, but it was very hush. We would not even talk about it too much. She was 100% not even interested in having a conversation about what she was going through to any stranger or anyone else outside the family. So it was almost like ignored to a certain degree. And I think.
And then why was that? Why was she or you not willing to talk about it?
She didn't want us to talk about it. But for her, it was, I think there was a lot of pride. Cancer can be very debilitating in terms of how you look physically, it takes a toll on you emotionally. She didn't want something to fight her down. She was a fighter. So she's like, nothing is going to take me down. And if I put emphasis on this, then it's going to just emphasize the seriousness of what's going on. So she just didn't want people to sympathize or look at her differently. There was a lot of pride.
So for her, this was kind of revealing her weakness, rather than coming up as a strong person.
Yes, completely. She had control over everything in her life. The way she brought up her kids, the way she ran her company, the way the house was run, the way we lived our lives. This one thing she just couldn't seem to have control over.
From saying that she's going to survive 6 months to going for 6 years, that must be quite some strength she had.
Definitely.
So what gave her that strength?
I think her children. Her life was us, to be very honest. She came from a very, very underprivileged background. She didn't come from much at all. For her to have built what she did and give us what we had was a big deal, and her way of showing the immense amount of love that she had for each one of us was, by showering us with all of this stuff. And that was her true happiness. In fact, we laugh about it today, but we traveled and saw more of the world in the 6 years that she was going through cancer than we ever did in our entire lives. She loved traveling the world. She loved seeing new countries. Mm-hmm. And I remember her oncologist used to we used to plan travel holidays according to her chemo cycles. And we were teased that, this family, the amount of family holidays they go on is ridiculous. But that's all we did. We just saw the world in 6 years.
So which was your last favorite holiday with her?
I think it was London.
Mm-hmm.
She loved London. That was just like almost like a second home to us. And I remember her being her strongest, and, of course she was going through a cancer, but I remember having still my mother when we went to London. And after that, unfortunately,
So what changed? I mean, why, she went on till 6 years, but what changed in the last 6 months or whatever? What did you think made that difference?
Her body gave up. I still say this, the treatment took her, not anything, not the cancer. Yes, we were told that the cancer spread and all of that, but eventually to have that many rounds of chemotherapy, her body gave up. It just gave up. She was doing okay. Everything was being managed. One day she looked at me and she said, I'm not getting out of bed. And that's very unlike her. I'm not going to work. And no, I don't feel like eating. Exactly a month after that, she passed away. So she gave up. But I think she had reached a point where, it was fighting the treatment and the immunity just crashed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's...
And I think it's possibly well known that in the case of cancer, it's the treatment which causes the most amount of side effects.
Yeah, I think we're in a catch-22 because the treatment is toxic. So, you need the treatment to kind of destroy the cancer cells, but it's destroying your immunity as well. And your immunity is what's going to get you through. Yeah. So we're in a catch-22.
I must say that, hats off to your mom. I think, her story and her life has been inspirational, and her kids are definitely celebrating her legacy.
Yes. Oh, well, yeah. Hopefully.
That's amazing. No, that's amazing. But I think what's even more incredible is that after all of this, you had a career in marketing, you could have gone into Bollywood, you had a family business, or you could have just done nothing. And, I'm sure your mother had collected enough wealth for you to just keep roaming around the world. And there are many people who go through, close relatives, friends, going through terminal illness and eventually passing off. But your reaction to this was completely different, and that changed your life. So what made you do what you did?
So, I have always had this inherent, interest in health and wellness. It's just always been there. More so than everyone else. It's something that I've always been interested in the body, anatomy, in nutrition. And I used to watch her. Every time she ate better, she was, more physically active, she would take to treatment better. So I would notice all these things. But I couldn't really, put something to it or speak about it because I didn't know. It was just something I noticed. Now, after she passed away, it was a horrible experience, of course, but I knew that I couldn't be the same. I knew that, either I can be a victim and just be miserable and say, my life has come to an end, and do nothing with my life, or I can actually get up and do something about it. And I think a little bit of my mother's DNA in that sense remained in getting up and doing something about it. And those years that she used to advise us, she used to say, make something of yourself, it's all in your hands. So it was almost like owing it to her to start with. But I never thought it would be the space of oncology. It took me into that space. I knew I wanted
And you're not trained in medicine or anything.
Not a
right?
doctor.
So how do you just decide and say, I'm going to start treating the most, terminal diseases and care for sick patients? How did that happen?
I know. And it's shocking even today. And when I speak to oncologists who we work very closely with, they're saying, good, you didn't train as a doctor. But for the longest time, I didn't even fathom getting into the space of medicine because I thought I'm not a doctor. How can I do it? So I said, let me learn fitness. Let me learn anatomy. Let me learn movement therapy. And so I just packed my bags one day and I moved to New York.
So what is movement therapy?
It's using just functional movement and...
so is it like functional training?
It's like functional training, exactly. So I said, let me go and understand it. So I went and I moved to...
And when you did that, were you clear that you're going to do all of this eventually to start something?
Definitely not. So when I actually, after she passed away and I said, okay, I need to start doing something with my life, I looked at what we had and she had, we had multiple.
And this is after how many months or?
This was after about a year and a half.
About a year and a half.
Or a year. And, I saw, okay, fine. What are the resources we have? Okay, we have factories. We manufacture clothes. Let's create a sportswear label. There is a lack of good sportswear in India. So, one of the labels that I really liked was Lululemon. And I said, how do we recreate something like that for the Indian?
As I was telling you, I met the founder of Lululemon just last month in Vancouver, and his story itself is incredible. And Lululemon is just such an iconic brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you could have started something like Lululemon in India.
I could have started something like Lululemon, and we had actually gone into the process of R&D and sourcing the fabrics and actually getting quite a lot of investment and things like that into it. But something was amiss. Something just wasn't feeling right. I knew I was using this sportswear label as a stepping stone into getting into the actual realm of health and fitness. While everyone around me who was kind of, investing in this thought that, we're going to build this incredible brand. So I felt that I was not doing justice to what I really believed in. So I literally woke up one morning and I remember going to my older sister and I said, I'm not doing this. I'm not starting the sportswear label. And she's just like, you have lost your mind. So I said, maybe I have, but let me find it then. Let me figure it out. Saw this fitness course in New York and literally a month later packed my bags and moved to New York City, not knowing one person there. And they said, how are you going to do it? You're going through this loss of your mother. You're completely lost in terms of what you want to do with your life. And now you want to move to, New York City, not knowing anybody and doing fitness. And I said, yeah, it's exactly what I'm going to do.
And how long was that course?
So that course was a couple of months, but it was a very intensive course. And when I did that, they exposed me to something called special populations, which is, doing movement therapy for disabled people and, those going through chronic ailments, all of that. And obviously I thought to myself, I wonder if there's something in the space of oncology and cancer. And I remember my lecturer then turned around and said, of course there is. And I remember saying, but don't have to be a doctor. And he said, absolutely not. And then, that's when I trained further to become a cancer exercise specialist. And
is there something called cancer exercise specialist?
Yes. And you learn about over 25 different types of cancers and how to deal with the physical rehab of patients. So it's a very physical way of, healing a patient.
That was not in New York.
That was in Portland, Oregon, from the Cancer Exercise Training Institute.
Literally from the East Coast to the West Coast.
And from there, I went further into breast cancer recovery training because obviously, a lot of breast cancer patients have mastectomies and double mastectomies that result in a lot of postural deviations and a lot of physical implications on the body. So it was a very natural, step for me to get into breast cancer recovery training. I did that. And then, I actually work for a non-profit organization in New York City called Moving for Life, which was a dance, they're using dance therapy to rehabilitate patients.
So you also are a dancer?
No, not at all.
I was like, you've done everything. You've done Bollywood acting. So maybe you're also into dancing.
No, not at all. But I just said, this is, it was so interesting to see what these guys were doing, and they were giving free dance therapeutic classes to patients all over the city. And I said, let me go work with them. And I did. And that's when I had my first encounter with patients and survivors. And I would see them feel and get better. There was something that was happening. And I would start talking to them and they said, we don't know what it is, but this is like liberating coming to these dance classes. And I just saw them getting
And this
better.
was dance classes specifically for cancer patients?
Yes.
The Vishal Gondal Show will be right back after this break.
Tired of the shrill madness of primetime television?
Can't make sense of your morning newspaper anymore?
Then take a break to delve into some real conversations about policy, politics and economics.
Join me, Pavan Srinath,
And me, Hamsini Hariharan,
as we analyze news and views from India and the world and talk to experts on a wide range of issues on the Pragati podcast.
Episodes out every fortnight.
You can find us on the IVM Podcasts app or wherever else you get your podcasts from.
And did you go to any of the cancer hospitals or any of the wards and stuff?
Yes. So then I went to Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York City, which is one of the top cancer institutes in the world. I met the founder of the integrative center over there called Barry Castellet. And I told her that, this is something that I noticed doesn't exist in India. And do you think I could do something like this? And she said, well, you will never know till you try. And it is something that is needed for patients and survivors, and we can't only rely on conventional treatment. We need to look after and heal a patient as a whole.
So how is that possible? I was told cancer is all about chemotherapy and nothing else.
Well,
And we all heard about Steve Jobs, who tried all these alternate therapies and couldn't make it.
so, what happens is there is so much emphasis and perspective put on treatment because it's obviously a massive industry. But when you go and dig deep down into why cancer even happened in the first place, you will realize that the treatment deals with the physical symptoms, obviously, of the tumor or whatever that is showing up. But cancer just doesn't happen out of bad luck. There is a reason why it happened. Now, whether that's through emotional distress for many, many years or
genetics, does genetics
yes, but
play
even genetics plays a role. But honestly, 5 to 10% of cancer cases are genetic. They say about 90% is lifestyle related. Mm-hmm. So if it is lifestyle related, let's deal with that. Let's deal with lifestyle. Obviously it is going to come back if we don't deal with the root cause of why it occurred in the first place. So when I went to Memorial Sloan Kettering, I was just completely shocked because there a patient comes in, they get their treatment, but they also get, a very personalized clinical nutritionist to work with them. They also are given movement therapy. They're also given mind-body therapies like meditation and hypnosis and things like that. So they're dealt with very physically, mentally, and emotionally. And that is their treatment protocol. And that is something that just did not exist when my mother was going through treatment in India. So I was in a dilemma. I said, just what if I went back to India and tried to do something like this, and will probably be the first person that is doing it. And it would be a, epic fail or a epic success.
But why come to India? You could have continued doing this in the US or, there are already established centers. Why did you want to come back and do it in India?
Just because it didn't have it. Just because India's home. This is my home. This is the place that I was born. This is the place that my mother was treated for so many years. And I have seen so many patients and survivors, just like my mother, who don't know about this. And I felt that, yes, it would have been easy for me to stay back in the US because it's a fully established way of healing over there. Or I could just come and do it over here and establish it.
It did make sense, right? I mean, how would anybody take you seriously? Because you were like, your background is into business and then media and then acting. And now you are suddenly coming and saying you're going to start curing people or helping people with cancer. How did this all add up?
So I had a lot of fears. I wasn't sure if it's going to work, but definitely I did a lot of training in terms of even being able to meet oncologists in hospitals and say that I have some kind of credibility to talk about oncology. I'm not a doctor. I don't know your space in terms of conventional treatment, but I do know how to, work with rehabilitation through physical movement. I do know about nutrition to a certain extent because I went and I did a course at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition in New York, where it trained me as a holistic health coach. So I did come with some kind of credibility. But yes, there was a lot of apprehension and a lot of fears.
And especially doctors who have got trained for years. And how would they take somebody like you seriously? How was it like to convince the doctors on, first of all, convincing what you're trying? How did you explain them what was your program?
So when I moved to India, I still wasn't sure how I was going to set up, integrative healing or holistic therapies for cancer. I said, let me understand the healthcare space in India first. So I was very fortunate to do a stint at Tata Memorial Hospital in Mumbai, where I literally observed, I did an observership. So I just was under this one particular oncologist and I just was his shadow everywhere. And I used to sit.
So there's an observership.
Yeah, it's an observership.
Not internship.
Not an internship. It's an observership. You just watch. So I did that and I used to sit in his consults and I used to go for rounds with him and I used to meet his patients and I used to be in all the departments in Tata Memorial and I was completely blown away by what's going on.
So you were like the proverbial fly on the wall.
Yes. Exactly like that. And one thing I noticed was that in the consults that I sat at, it was funny. It was like a mirror image or a replay of our lives. Like, I would see families walk in and almost mimicking
like
us as a family.
Groundhog Day. The same day repeats again and again, and you see the same story.
The same story, and they all said, okay, treatment is fine, but now what? And there was no concise or like answer basically to say, what, this is what you can do. Take these precautions, do this. It was like, try to be healthy, be normal, eat healthy. Those were the answers, which is not good enough. So I said, there has to be an answer to something like this. My initial thought was set up in the hospital. And in fact, actually the response was really, really good. Like a lot of the hospitals and oncologists were very open to the concept because I brought in, or what I was proposing was complementary therapies. I did not say alternative. That is a no-no. So I said...
So just what is the difference between alternative and complementary therapy?
So complementary therapies are evidence-based therapies. They have a lot of proven studies to show the effect that it has on certain types of cancers and healing certain types of cancers. Alternative therapies are one where you say no to treatment and you do the alternative.
And I think the big problem right now is that people don't know that there are complementary therapies. Mostly it's this is either you take chemotherapy or you become vegan and go and take the Ayurvedic treatment or do homeopathy and do this and do that. And the minute you do this, your chances are half or whatever. Yeah. But the complementary therapy allows you to do both chemotherapy and the traditional allopathy.
It allows you to do allopathic medicine plus holistic therapies that are evidence-based. So example would be obviously nutrition, would be yoga therapy. There are a lot of studies with yoga therapy and especially things like breast cancer. It would be meditations. It would be music therapy. So various different types of therapies that fall under the spectrum of complementary. But once you go into, unfortunately, even something like Ayurveda is tagged as alternative. Homeopathy is tagged as alternative.
So why are these therapies not covered as complementary therapies? I thought they were always complementing chemotherapy and things like that. I
think there's just a lack of, I could be wrong, but I think there's lack of evidence that is required for something like this to work. A lot of the mainstream treatment goes on, or more or less all the mainstream treatment goes on. What are the studies behind it? What is the evidence behind something like this? Where are the proven studies that this is actually? So
when you came back and you started Carroll, how did you get your first patient?
Yeah, that was God. I don't think I'll ever forget my first patient. So I started Carroll last year and we did a pilot and it was a very different concept. We used technology to reach out to the mass. So we said, let's bridge the gap between, these very high-end specialists, cancer care specialists, and bridge it and provide their services to the mass. I think it was way beyond its time and people just didn't get the concept of using, the form of technology in healing. But we kind of held forth for a while and then an article of mine came out in a newspaper. And after that, this person, a couple of people got in touch and this one person who obviously believed in what we were doing got the program. But then it has evolved tremendously from there. And today,
and what is the Carroll program? How do you explain it to a layman? What are you exactly doing?
So what we do is we are a full-blown home healthcare company. We provide holistic therapies that work with treatment for patients going through treatment as well as post-treatment. So we deal with managing the side effects of treatment better, increasing the effectiveness of treatment, building immunity, that's key, and putting them on the path to decreasing the chances of relapse. So that's what we focus on. And we do this through 4 fundamental therapies. 1 is diet and nutrition. 2 is yoga therapy specifically for cancer. 3 is meditation. And 4 is a lot of coaching and counseling and support for the patients as well as family members.
So when you started, this sounds like a very crazy idea. How could yoga therapy and meditation, convincing a doctor or, traditional medical system to adopt to this must be a challenge.
What played in our favor is the fact that there are a lot of studies and a lot of evidence that is showing significant amount of positive implications that these therapies are having on the healing or recovery of a patient. So when I went to doctors, I didn't say that we're doing holistic therapies. I said integrative oncology. So integrative oncology is a very well-established way of treatment or healing in the West. So they knew it. They got the concept. They obviously asked me, but what are the therapies? Now, the degree of, believing in this working or not ranges from doctor to doctor. There are some oncologists who very much support what we're talking about and says, I completely agree with it. And there are some oncologists who say, maybe No,
but how did you convince them to work with you? Because you don't have a background in medicine or any of these things, right? I mean, you come from a completely different background, and how could doctors take this entire thing so seriously?
Because of the specialists that I got on board. It took us about 2 years to even procure the right kind of specialists. I was very particular about who are these specialists that are going into the homes of my clients. And it took us a very long time. I mean, even something like yoga, where we are in the land of yoga, to find yoga therapists, not teachers, but therapists that work with chronic ailments and have a background in cancer or have worked with cancer was a nightmare. And the same with all the other specialists. So it took us a very long time. So the group of specialists that we have now got together are certainly the best in their respective fields. So the people who work with our clients through nutrition are all clinical nutritionists. Those who work with yoga, and they are all yoga therapists that work in the space of cancer. The same with meditation. And then, of course, we do a lot of coaching and all of that. So it was not selling me or talking about my credibility. It was talking about these people, because these people are, steering the ship.
So you had to convince two set of people, right? The doctors and then the patients themselves. So how do you get the patients to actually believe in something like this? Because again, this is completely new in India.
So what happened was, when we, once we evolved into a home healthcare company, we launched with Manipal Hospital in Bangalore. Now, what happened was that they came to us and they said, yes, this works, but you can only come on board or sell this to our patients post-treatment. Now, I knew that integrative healing is the best or most effective when a patient is diagnosed. So I said, let me start going to oncologists as well. When I presented this to the oncologist, I said, I'm an extension of your treatment. We work with you. We will give you a stronger, more compliant patient, because we're dealing and managing the side effects of your treatment much better. We're dealing with the collateral damage that your treatment is giving to a patient. So they were very for it, and they agreed with the concept.
And how do you send the data back to these doctors? How do they know what their patients are doing?
It's a very personalized program. So every patient that comes on board, a schedule is created for them, and they are with us for about 6 months. And all the referring doctors get a report every week to let them know how their patient is doing.
So how is this different than the traditional cancer treatment? Let's assume that there are two people both undergoing cancer treatment, and one is on your program and one is without your program. How would both these journeys look like?
Well, one who is just doing the conventional treatment is bombarding its system with toxic treatment and suppressing the immune system even further. They have, like I said, the side effects are worse. They are obviously going or dealing with the treatment at a much severe level. And of course, their chances of relapse are higher. When we come into play, we work with the treatment. So we say the doctors and the oncologists are, and your treatment protocol is essential. And they're dealing with the physical symptoms. Now let's dig deep down into why it happened in the first place and clear out that. So deal with the root cause. So whether that's through diet and nutrition, whether that's through yoga, through emotional disturbances, which are very, very major parts to play in, chronic ailments. We go into that and we spend considerable amount of time with them for 6 months to clear that out.
So in a way that the traditional treatment is essentially treating the symptom and suppressing the symptom and carpet bombing, the hell out of you, and figuring out something is going to work. And what you are doing is complementing this with some really precision therapies, which could kind of help people in their mind, body, or whatever challenge they have. And how effective is this?
Well, we are new in the space, but we are seeing patients getting better. We, work with them almost every day. We see them emotionally in a stronger place. Their side effects are much lower than what a normal person who is just going through conventional treatment, would.
So give an example of how different could be the side effects for people with and without the carer program.
Oh my God. So like even things like fatigue, one of the biggest side effects of cancer treatment. So a lot of, when you go through treatment, you get extremely physically weak. And another element of that is depression. You go into a very dark space of mind. So we come in there, we work with you physically in terms of, re-energizing the body, using yoga therapy to, just even do very effective pranayam and things like that. So they are much stronger. So we have noticed that a lot of our patients, are not even there. The days that they're taking to recover is shortening. So, usually maybe a patient would take 3 to 5 to 7 days or whatever after treatment. And it is decreasing as we work with them. So we notice these kind of things.
So cancer is literally becoming an epidemic, right? I mean, the amount of people
it is an epidemic.
So is there a prevention? How could somebody prevent having cancer?
There are so many ways to prevent it. I think it's a balanced life. I think it's your lifestyle. It's the way you eat. It's the way you live your life. Stress, chronic stress is really a killer. A lot of people turn around and ask me, but what do you mean by stress? How does that work? Because if you're chronically stressed for a long period of time, you release cortisol in your system, which feeds cancer, which basically increases inflammation in the body, and cancer loves inflammation. So anything that is chronic for a long period of time will manifest into something like a chronic disease, one of which can be cancer. So, managing your stress, your sleep is when you heal, is actually, we give very, very limited importance to, how much we sleep and how well we sleep. And movement. These are all ways to keep the body healthy physically and mentally. And that's all there is to it. So it's not about going extremes. It's not about, I want to be a fruitarian or whatever it is. It's about living in balance. There are a lot of people out there that might not have the healthiest diet, but are the happiest people and are completely disease-free. That says something. So it's about a balance.
And the current system, how open is it to alternate therapies or complementary therapies like this?
Much more open than I thought. Yes, I did have encounters of, a certain few who were completely not interested or just said that this is just another thing and forget it. It's our treatment and that's it. Alternative treatment is, I think there is still a way to go, because it is not in their realm of treatment, but complementary, yes. There are a lot of, they are open to it because we're not saying anything that is against their system. If an oncologist turns around and says that what carer is providing can do harm to a client or a patient, honestly, that oncologist should not be practicing. So, yeah.
In the current medical system, which is so, let's say inundated with medicines and so inundated with their own protocols, when you introduce something like yoga, how do you measure the success of that?
We have our own studies that we're doing with each one of our patients. So we obviously have an assessment sheet that we give to them or that we record at the start of their, yoga sessions, and then something that we monitor every week. And obviously our yoga therapists are equipped to understand and also notice when a patient is getting physically stronger. And then, of course, record the data again at the end of the yoga sessions. So that's where we're recording data constantly.
And how has this program evolved now? It's almost over a year and a half since you're running this?
No, so we started last year in June.
So but
like I said, we started as an online platform and we did a pilot. So it wasn't officially launched. We officially launched last year in September as a a home healthcare company, but it was post-treatment. Today, we have changed it and we work mainly with patients who have just been diagnosed.
I remember Luke, the master coach at Goki, told me about you. He was absolutely excited because for the first time there was somebody else talking about integrated health.
Yeah.
So tell me about your encounter with Luke. How did you meet him?
Luke has been just fantastic in this journey. He really has been one of the people that has encouraged me to go and do this, because obviously you have fears because you're not in the space, or you're not a medical doctor. So when I first met Luke, first of all, it took me a very long time to even get in a meeting with him. And when I did, I spoke my heart. I told him exactly what I had been through, what my dreams are, and I was like, call me crazy, but this is what I think I'm about to do. And he 100% supported. He said, listen, this is what's needed, and I have to encourage people like you because it is what's needed. So he has been very integral in, making Carroll what it is today.
And I think you really require champions like Luke. So 100%. Who are the other people who helped you in your journey?
So we have some fantastic oncologists, actually, one of which is Dr. Vishal Rao. Now, he is a man who is just more than a doctor. He sees beyond anyone else does. So he has really encouraged me in this. Another doctor would be Dr. Poonam Patil, who pushed this through as well. And I think these are the main people that really encouraged me and helped me get a very strong team on board. And whoever we've got from there has been perfect for the part and has and really lives what we talk about, and it's a part of what they believe as well. So yeah.
The Vishal Gondal Show will be right back after this break.
Long, long ago, not in Bethlehem, but in a place nearby, there was a wonderful birth of a huge show, which I like to call Cyrus Says. A show that encapsulates everything in human history, from the first Homo sapien to the last Homo sapien, who's traversed the entire world and then come back to India. This is a show which tells you everything about everything. If you want to know, avoid Google, come to us. It's called Cyrus Says. Get new episodes every Monday on the IVM podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts on. You get one banana vada free with every podcast. Right. I'll just check that.
I still remember you talking about the time you lost your mom. That was 2011. 2010. And now it's 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And in 7 years from being a helpless, relative of a chronically ill patient to today helping people, how has that journey been? I mean, it's mind-blowing what you've been able to do.
It's been incredible. Like I was telling you earlier, it is bittersweet because I know that, and I tell my family this, I know that our program would have probably saved my mother's life. What we have created today would have 100% put her into a better path to recovery. But at the same time, I would never have created something like this if it wasn't for her, obviously. Never knowing that I would ever get into this space, or even be able to talk to doctors and hospitals and today deal with patients one-on-one and see them get better because of what we're doing there is no way that it was even in my thought process. But it's amazing how, the universe conspires and opens up these pathways for you. And it has just been a snowball effect from one to the other.
And it's amazing that a lot of super achievers I speak to always give credit to the universe for making things happen. I'm sure there are things beyond the universe which are also helping you. So what are those things or what are those people?
I think my family, although they were apprehensive at the start of me, getting into the space of oncology, after that they've just been rock solid. It's always been this feeling of comfort because I know if I fail or if I fall, they are there no matter what. And sometimes you just need that. You just need that feeling that someone is standing behind you, and they've really consistently done that.
And did you ever had the fear of failing in this? I mean, this is like,
oh my God, every day I have a fear of failing in terms of, am I going to get that patient better? Is this company going to reach out to as many patients as we would like? will the hospitals and oncologists still, entertain what we're doing? Will I live up to my dreams? Because I have very, very, very big dreams. So the fear of failing is there every day.
But that still doesn't stop you from doing all these things.
No way.
Unfortunately, most people don't take action because of that fear.
Yeah.
So what is the advice you would give to somebody? Like I said, your background is so incredible. You've done all these varied things, but you've ended up in the most advanced field of medicine, working with the top doctors in the world. What advice would you have to somebody like you?
Well, I think that the one thing that I would say, and every time I do feel fear, is that I really go down into, so what would happen? What is the worst that could happen? And every time I don't find a good enough reason, I just get up and move on. So there are so many times that I feel fear and I say, okay, fine. What's going to happen if I fail at this? What's going to happen if it doesn't pan out the way I would like it to? And usually the answer is that, okay, then you'll shut shop and you go back home and then you'll probably start again. So
it's amazing what you talked about. So Tim Ferriss, who talks about this, he's one of the, award-winning, best-selling authors, New York Times.
Yes, big follower.
Yeah, he talks about fear setting. And I recently met him in Vancouver, and his talk was around, once again, how people do not plan for fears. And if the worst case scenario is thought about before, how things can change. And it's amazing how you exactly described that.
One thing that I noticed was that even the fear of cancer, stems from a complete lack of knowledge about what cancer even is. There is so many misconstrued assumptions and presumptions.
The funny thing is, if you Google anything, it'll finally say that this is going to take cancer. You say you have a stomachache, a toothache, a headache.
Yeah.
And, if you Google it and after 5 searches, you're like, oh God, do I have cancer?
Exactly. And everyone perceives it as such a scary illness. And so did we. And I remember my family, we were, somewhere, and I remember them looking at me and saying that, we have this fear that what if we get it? And I said, just go down into what even cancer is. Understand it from a cellular level. Understand how cancer actually happens in the system, and then you will know that it's in your control. When you know how it happens and how it develops and progresses in your body, you know how you can deal with it. And when I feel fear, I go and learn about what exactly is that. So I used to suffer a lot with panic attacks and anxiety attacks when, my mom was going through cancer and all of that. And I actually went deep down into what are panic attacks? Why does this happen? And it just cleared up.
So studying about your fears can itself make you unfearful of that.
100%. And it's also the notion of what that fear or what that thing is going to bring to you. But when you actually face it, it's not that scary. That's what I've seen.
I mean, it's almost like superstitions, right? I mean, we just believe in doing something because somebody else told us without even understanding the logic, or if it doesn't even have any logic at some point.
Exactly, right? Exactly. And so if you just face it up front and say, okay, fine, I have this fear. What's the worst that can happen? And what is this fear? Where is it stemming from? What will it really do for me or to me? And when you really go and actually study and break it down, you realize that, oh, okay, fine, this is really not that scary.
So for people who are suffering from cancer, or who have friends or family from suffering from cancer, what advice do you have for them? What can they do differently? And if they are undergoing chemotherapy today, or they know of somebody, what advice can you give them? What do they go and tell their doctor or hospital that what do they need? Because I don't think so most people are even aware of this.
I think number one is don't panic, because it really is not as scary as it's made out to be. Number two is it's all lies in your immune system. Do whatever it takes to boost immunity. And 3 is don't be afraid to question the doctors. My biggest regret in my entire life was not to question, was to just follow suit. So I would just say do these 3 things. And whatever looks as the best option that would look after you physically and mentally,
But I think one of the problems is that most doctors are not willing to answer these questions, right? They are just too busy. So what do you do if, your doctors, and because now every person is Googling and going back to the doctors. So doctors are also getting really tired of some really stupid questions.
Yeah, that is true. That is happening. In fact, we tell all our patients, just don't go on Google. It's like banned. Just no Google. So we are trying to get out there. We are trying to, educate. We want to use our writing platforms, our blog posts, even maybe video content to start talking about this. And spreading the knowledge.
And the carer program, how expensive is it? Is it affordable for a normal person who's just, making, already cancer treatment is so expensive?
I have done everything in my power to make it as nominal as possible because I know what treatment costs. I didn't want someone to turn away from the program because it was too expensive. So we broke it down to about 8,000 rupees a month, and you get all your specialists who visit you in your house for 6 months.
Wow.
So we kept it as nominal as possible. In fact, I have been given a lot of flack for this and said that you're undervaluing yourself and all of that. Currently it is this amount. And we want to make it such that, everyone has access to it.
And we were talking that insurance is currently not covering this too.
Yeah.
And what could insurance companies do? I mean, why would insurance companies want to cover this for patients?
Because it obviously can decrease your risk of relapse. It's getting a person healthier permanently. It's not a quick fix. It's not a pill that you take and then, you're done for that and then it's back again. It's about educating and teaching a patient. So whatever we provide to them, yes, we give them the therapies at home, but we also have, coaches who educate them as to why this is important and help them continue for the rest of their life.
But I'm sure that as part of your program, there would still be people who wouldn't make it. Cancer would still consume them.
Unfortunately, what happens is there are a lot of patients who come to us at last stages when the doctors have said there's no hope and they say, okay, you'd give us whatever, we can do. And we make it very clear to them that you have reached a point where it's terminal, but we never say it's over or, there's no hope. We just never say that. That is just something that just doesn't even resonate with us. But yes, we do have patients who come to us at last stages and who really have not much left. So we concentrate on quality of life.
How difficult is it to deal with such terminal patients? I mean, you've done it once with your mother, right? I mean, now you are literally dealing with literally hundreds of these people. How is it? I mean, how is it different that time and now that you have so many people under your care who are going through this?
We've lost 2 patients, and that was purely because they came to us at very late stages. It's tough. I'm not going to lie and say it's easy, but you build some type of immunity to it. The more you go through it, No, my point was that are you reliving the time you had with your mother and like trying to do things differently? Is that what you are really doing in a way? Yes. So it was very strange because at the start, I would get clients or patients and family members that were replicas of us as a family. So I would literally see myself in so many daughters whose mothers were diagnosed with cancer. But it was very different because they would question. They would say, how are you going to help our mother? How is this going to benefit her? How is she going to heal and things like that? So yes, there were many times that I relived it and I still do. And I cannot say that, I have mastered the art of, having a detachment. It does affect me sometimes, but I think it's all time and I think it's, experience. And I think a lot of self-care is what I have to indulge in.
So where do you think you will be 10 years from now with Carer and everything else you're doing in your life?
A global organization. We want to go global. We want to have, home health care that provides holistic therapies for chronic ailments around the world at your doorstep. I would like to expand beyond cancer. I would like to go into the space of diabetes, of cardiac, of neuro, things like that. But
isn't cancer itself so big?
Yes. Yes, it is. So, yeah, cancer is our space right now, and we want to really thrive in that. We want to provide therapies. And I think the next thing that we will do is go into the space of pediatrics, where we provide holistic therapies for children that are going through cancer and give them, these therapies at home. But then expand beyond that as well.
Mm-hmm. So how has, your family helped you? You come from a family which is, doing all this business, and you're also in a way, I think, related to the Mahindra group and all of that. Mm-hmm. So did that help in any ways on whatever you did?
So my family, in terms of my immediate family, they were, and they have been very supportive, of course. In terms of my father's side, which is the Mahindra family, Anand Mahindra was very, very supportive. So it's not that we had a very strong relationship all my life, but when I moved back to India, I went and met him and, just reconnected and all of that. And he definitely did help, open few doors and was very, very supportive of what I'm doing. And he's definitely a mentor to kind of understand how to run businesses.
So what my idea was that it was not like, because you had all this money and funding.
Oh my God, no. No, I wish. No. Not at all. It was all, in fact, it was all done on my accord. Whatever I had and I saved is what I put into this company, and I still do. A lot of people ask me, is it funded by the Mahindras? Is it funded by any other external investor? And I say it's not at all. It's personal.
So are you having any plans to raise money?
Maybe in the future. I want it to be a self-sustainable business. And even though those who come on board, I really want them to speak the language that we do.
Well, that's really rare, given the .com. As you saw, most of these companies are raising millions and billions and writing it off, and nobody has a business model. And especially in the health space, we have seen so many startups come on. I think you have a very different model than everybody else.
So actually, believe it or not, and I'm not complaining, but there have been VCs who have come to me via LinkedIn and things like that and said, we want to talk to you and we would like to invest or whatever. I have stepped away because I don't want it to become a numbers game right now. For me, it's about the quality of healthcare that I'm providing to patients. When we can handle a numbers game is when we will go in that space.
And I think it's, I tell a lot of people, right? It's not money which can solve the problem. What you need is a product, a real problem. Are you solving a real problem?
Exactly.
And I think in your case, with your own experience, you identified a problem, learned about it, went methodically about it, and then came up with this idea. So this is not somebody reading a report in a newspaper and saying, I'm going to start hyper local delivery of something because, or there are so many of these home health services who are sending you physiotherapists and this and that. Yeah. And we know the quality over there is very, very challenging.
I think you have to also know what is the purpose of your business. So yes, there are people who start businesses and they want to exit and all of that, and that's great. For me, I'm building a foundation. For me, I'm building something that's going to last hopefully beyond me and, way beyond that. So it's not about, funding it in growth rates and numbers and things like that right now. It's about quality healthcare, and I don't want to lose the soul of my business. Because we're still so real in the game and we're still so connected to each one of our patients. So that itself is a very beautiful feeling.
Well, all I can tell you is that whenever you're raising money, please ping me.
Definitely.
We'll, definitely figure out a way to help you on this, because what you are doing is really, really needed more than anything else. So let me quickly talk to you about your own self. Mm-hmm. With all this stress and all these patients and all these doctors, how do you manage your life? What is your daily routine?
I think, so I can say I've become a very disciplined person. And that works for me. Having a routine works for me. I do give about an hour to myself every morning. And that just goes without saying. So meditation has become a big part of my life. Exercise always was.
And do you do guided meditation or do you any kind of meditation?
I do a meditation that we do in our program. It's called the Heartfulness Meditation, and it has changed my life. And that's something that I really dedicate to.
Heartfulness is the one from the lady in Coimbatore. No, that's a different one.
No. This is a global organization.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I do. And I think, I don't know, there is nothing else that I can say that, is just a complete extreme from my work.
And what's your typical breakfast?
It's always very healthy. It's always more protein, to be honest. I'm not the South Indian breakfast person, which I find a lot of people in Mumbai are. But yeah, it's probably eggs and maybe some toast and, beans and things like that. I'm a big Tim Ferriss fan when it comes to breakfast. And
so you are following the 4-hour body.
Yeah, huh? I've read all his books, yeah.
Tim Ferriss is really one of my inspirations, my guru, my mentor. Yeah. In fact, partly the whole idea of this show came from what Tim Ferriss is itself doing. I think, I think it's amazing. It's refreshing to meet another Tim Ferriss fan.
Yes.
So what is your favorite Tim Ferriss book? Or Tim Ferriss idea?
The 4-hour Workweek, 100%. That's something really resonant and actually changed the way I work. So there was one, rule that he had in there, which is the Pareto's rule, where it's 80-20. And I literally did that. I changed the way I was working and I started putting effort and time into 20% of everything that would give me 80% of the results. It really changed the way I started working. That's a big book. I just read Tools of the Titans. Yep. And that was an eye-opener as well.
And nice. which particular Titan inspired you?
I don't know if there was one in particular, but one routine inspired me, and that was actually writing. So I still do it, where in the morning you basically write what you aspire to be, but you almost write it out in terms of, I think there was one where I don't remember, but he said, that this is what I want to achieve, and you keep writing it 15 times. I don't know, it just became a part of my routine now, and I do it every morning. Actually, writing in a diary is something that I do every morning.
So who are the other authors you read?
I read a lot of autobiographies, but one book that has always been something that has stayed in my heart is Living with the Himalayan Masters.
And what's that book about? I have not read that. So
it's a life of yogis and things like that, and how they master their lives in which is so unconventional to the way we live our mundane lives, and it's very inspiring. Yeah, that's something that stayed within me. Yeah.
What is a possession or something you bought which is, let's say, worth less than 10,000 rupees, which you use a lot?
I absolutely hate shopping, and I'm not a shopper. So if I really need to buy anything, that it has to be something that I really need. I think the last thing that I bought was the Jio dongle, which was under 10,000 rupees.
Well, all I can say is Jio has indeed changed the way India's life.
Yes.
I got a Jio SIM, and it gives me 1 GB a day for 30 days.
I know.
By the way, this is not a paid endorsement of Reliance in any ways, but Mukesh Bhai, wherever you are changing the way India uses the internet.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that's apart from the Jio dongle, anything else which comes to your mind?
I don't shop. I just don't buy things unless I really, really require it. So that's probably the last thing that I can think of for a very long time.
Well, you don't shop, you don't indulge. So how do you spend your weekends
I do
now?
indulge. I love traveling.
Okay.
Travel is a very big part of my life. I am not able to do as much of it right now because of all the work. But when I do travel, I really indulge.
And where was your last travel?
The last travel was to LA and New York in October for my 30th.
Oh, okay. So
Yes.
that was more again a long holiday, or?
It was 3 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So 3 weeks was good.
Yeah.
And do you have friends there, or it was just on your own?
And New York's like my home now. So yes, I have a lot of friends. LA, I had a few friends, so I went and met them as well. But yeah, it's a very comfortable place for me.
I think finally, before I end, what I really wanted to ask you is that what are the 3 lessons you have learned in your last 10 years? Going from a carefree student to possibly somebody who is now handling people's lives. these are two extremes, right? I mean, there was a time you were carefree and, around the world. The only person you were responsible was yourself.
Yeah.
And today, at being so young, and you are like responsible for people's lives of chronically ill patients without being a doctor, without being in the medical field, without having a background in medicine.
Number one, because this was my biggest regret and I learned a lot from it today, is always question. Always question. Whatever is put in front of you, question it. 2 is, you can achieve anything. It's in your hands. There is nothing that you can't achieve. There are only excuses, but there's really nothing that, you can't go out there and accomplish. And 3 is, which I'm living by right now, is don't look back, keep moving. Just keep moving.
And do you also use the Pareto principle?
100%, yeah, all the time. It's changed the way I work. And so that's something that has actually changed my company.
So where are there like 2 examples on how you use it in your day-to-day life?
In my work?
Work or day-to-day life?
So in my work, the way I have used it is that before I was, spending a lot of time trying to collaborate with hospitals, things like that, where I just now bypass all of it and go to the patient. And I spend most of my time meeting patients and talking to them about it, because at the end of the day, they are the consumers of what we're doing. That has changed the game for us. In my daily life, I think the way I plan my day, because I think when you're running or starting a company, there's no concept of time. But I'm very good at planning my day in such a way that, whatever is being dealt with or accomplished at that specific time is productive for that day.
And do you travel light, or do you have a big bag or suitcase?
I travel very light. I don't have, the least I can carry, the better. It's disgraceful, but...
It's not disgraceful. It is smart, I would say, especially...
I just can't, that added weight is something that just troubles me.
So you're so accomplished, and I know the carer program is going to go places. While all this is going on, do you have certain non-professional goals, like in your personal life, anything else you want to achieve?
Non-professional. So I think, in my personal life, definitely I would, some point get married. But then again, I don't know how relevant the institution of marriage is today. But I think find a companion. It's always nice to have someone who's, there with you. So I think that's something. Also experiencing motherhood. So it just seems like everyone in my family and everyone around me are having children. So maybe that's why I'm feeling like this. But yeah, motherhood is, to be able to raise a child in a certain way and, be very conscious, and mindful of, the way they're brought up and make them something, or at least help them reach somewhere, would be very interesting.
I'm sure, Samara, your mother is really proud of you. Wherever she is looking at all the stuff you have done. I think her life, you have now celebrated it in such a beautiful way with the carer program. If you had a chance to meet her again once, what is the one thing you will tell her or ask her?
I would just say you're a rock star and thank you. That's it.
Thanks a lot, Samara. It has been an absolute pleasure.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Sorry to say, but there's been a slight delay due to the apocalypse having suddenly begun. As you can see, there's death, destruction, and chaos taking place all around us. But don't you worry, food and drinks will be served shortly, and I would recommend checking out IVM Podcasts to catch some of your favorite Indian podcasts. We'll keep you going till this whole thing blows over. Thank you.